Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. The mindset that we bring to any situation plays a key part in overcoming challenges and really enjoying our unique paths in life. On Thoughtful Thursdays, I like to explore emotional topics that are relevant to CRNAs and other providers. I think of this as my therapy, and I hope you learn some tips and tricks that you can use along your own journey. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now on with the show. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays on the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. And as always, I like to start these shows off with a quote that gets me thinking. Ellen Goodman once said, "We spend January 1st walking through our lives room by room, drawing up a list of work to be done, cracks to be patched. Maybe this year, to balance the list, we ought to walk through the rooms of our lives, not looking for flaws, but for potential." Christmas is past and we're hitting the new year in 2 days. I don't think I'm the only one who feels like this year has flown by. Plenty of us out here are still recovering from 2020. Much less, being on the approach for 2022. With a new year comes renewed optimism and hopefully an invigorated sense of purpose. I know that as I've gotten older, I tend to look at these times with a thought toward the increasingly authentic person that I'm trying to become. I'm not really into resolutions, but I do try to make goals for myself that align with my overall values. And in moving towards authenticity, I often face choices between optimism and pessimism. Most of us want to be optimistic. It's helpful to channel that optimism into confidence and achievement. Plus, optimism tends to produce a more positive mental attitude, which just feels better. But we don't want to delude ourselves into a false reality either. Sometimes in our efforts to recognize the reality of a situation, it's easy to slip into negativity or pessimism. A common resolution that folks have is to find the courage to speak up and to share more of their true selves with others instead of hiding behind some facade. But how quickly can this turn into someone saying the phrase, "I'm not trying to upset anyone, I'm just telling it like it is"? Unfortunately, this is rarely used to say something like, "Girl, you look fabulous in that dress, and I'm just telling it like it is." No, it's often used to say something negative, pessimistic, or downright inaccurate. These people believe that they are displaying bravery in saying things that others are somehow afraid to say, when in fact, they're probably just using the phrase as an excuse to be an a-hole. And this is where the balance of sincerity, compassion, and tact come into play. Being optimistic doesn't require displays of toxic positivity. What really defines optimism is the will to keep fighting for another day. You will experience setbacks, and you must honor that grief, anger, sadness, anxiety, or disappointment when it comes along. But you should also be able to keep space in your mind for the hope that something better is on the way. Recognizing the reality of a situation allows you to properly assess and change your expectations as needed. Now, you can make the argument that having realistic expectations saves a lot of headache later on down the line. But to be truly realistic, you must learn to find the good and the bad alike. The saying that a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity and the optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty might sound nice, but I think that most of us find ourselves somewhere in the middle in our search for authenticity, and that's okay. Apparently, being an optimist can lead to an increased lifespan of 10 to 15%. That's pretty incredible. But on the flip side, self-described pessimists seem to be more likely to discover serious illnesses early on that would otherwise lead to premature death in those who are more optimistic about their health overall. Maybe being in the middle gives us a nice balance, eh? Overall, I think the main lesson that I took from the quote is that being critical of ourselves is a natural thing to do as we enter the new year. In the rush to set resolutions and goals, we should just make sure to set aside some time to take an accurate assessment of our own self-worth. Yeah, chances are we all have some pretty awesome talents to work with. As usual, I've attached some links to articles that inspired this show. And if you found value today, I'd love it if you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. I also want to hear from you. If you have a question, comment, or topic that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming show, make sure you rate and review on your podcast player. I check those all the time, and I cover those questions in future episodes. Be safe out there this New Year's Eve, and I'll see you again next year. This is Bobby Jones signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.